on um, sovereignty and the right to command. Who has the right to command and who has to obey those commands. So there's a little phrase I found in a book somewhere called papal bull. And I wondered about this word and I thought about this word and I read what it meant. And there's a little story that goes with it. A papal bull is something that the Pope writes. And it's called a bull because it has force. It has force, and so it's called a command. In the Catholic Church, the structure goes from from God to the Pope to the kings and queens, and they all claim to have sovereign power directly from God, which is why the colonists, they say, at least most of them, wanted to leave England and most of Europe because there was tyranny by the kings and queens using this structure of sovereignty, meaning that the king or the pope could force anyone to do anything upon his command. And our Declaration of Independence shows that those commands were often arbitrary and were done in vengeance. Vengeance is something that the founders wanted to make sure didn't occur here. And so they used the word in the Constitution, defense with a C, because defense meant, with a C, meant fortify, and defense with an S is Latin for vengeance. Okay, that's not what they wanted. They didn't want to pursue an act of vengeance against anyone. They just wanted to fortify themselves and live in peace. So the kings and the popes, they commanded, and they called themselves sovereign. In the United States, we have a different system set up. A system that we have acknowledges that all men are equal and they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, which makes all the people, each individually, sovereign. The individuals create the cities, they create the states, they create the League of Friendship between the states, and they create the federal government for defense with the sea purposes. And so that sovereignty flows down upward. Okay, so by the time it gets to the federal government, it has very little right to sovereignty. Sovereignty is the right to command. Okay, and in our Constitution, the right to command by the federal government is just within itself for defense purposes. So the Constitution gave the federal government the right to command itself or its departments and agencies or the military to do certain things. And they were supposed to do those things in the name of defense with a C, which directly benefited or indirectly benefited all the people, all the free, sovereign, and individual people. So here we have an example of the command, shall. Okay, so shall is a command, may is not a command. Okay, so when I was a regulatory enforcement specialist, this is one of the first things that I learned was that shall was the command. So shall must be adhered to, may or can are suggestions. Okay, so let's look at a couple of things. This, by the way, was 1 U.S. Code 106, so it's Title 1, U.S. Code 106, Printing Bills and Joint Resolutions. Congress shall, that means they're commanded to do a thing. Okay, and I find this from the OLRC website. Okay, and let's look at the president. We can look at delegation of functions. He's authorized, shall be subject. Okay, shall be, will, must. It's a command. You will be subject to such terms and conditions and limitations as the president may deem advisable, and shall be irrevocable at any time by the president in whole or in part. That's a command. Shall be subject to the terms. Okay, so those are commands. Let's look at some of the stuff written about commands. Okay, so now keep in mind this book was written by Sir John William Salmon, and this is on the laws of England. So their structure for government is a little bit different from ours, but the ideas behind those structures are basically the same. So it says the laws are the commands laid upon the state or laid by the state upon its subjects, and the law courts are the organs through which such commands are enforced. So we don't have subjects here. We have citizens and we have sovereign individuals. So the private citizens are the lawful creators of the state. So the citizens are sovereign over the state. The citizens are supposed to command the state. The states together combined ratified the Constitution, and so they are supposed to command the federal government. Now, for purposes of defense with a C, when we're in war or for certain very specific purposes, the federal government can command the states. They can also command those areas in the state, the military areas, like in a time of war. The federal government would command the military. There's never a time when the federal government can command individual private citizens, because the individual private citizens are the sovereign. They're the free people. They're independent, supposed to be independent. This idea is acknowledged time and time again by many different political, philosophical, legal writers. Okay. And he says this throughout his book. This is Jurisprudence by John Salmon, or Theory of Law. Okay, I'll show you the cover real quick. I've showed it in some of my other videos. So you see that there. And let's look at what we have here. Let's see. So when the sovereign says something, and our sovereign being the federal government says something to itself that is within the confines of the Constitution, it's called positive law. Okay, the principle of sovereignty. Okay, the other is a theory of the origin of the civil society and contract. So you have a society and contract, and then you have the civil authority. The sovereign authority. Our sovereign authority at the federal level is over itself in the military. Over the state level is over some things in the state, and then the people are over the state. So the things that the state are over would be like the organization of schools and businesses and roads and things like that. In every form of government, you must come at last to some power which is absolute, to which all other powers of the state are subject, and which itself is subject to none. That would be the people. And I'm not talking about the people in government. I'm talking about the individuals. Okay, the individuals, each individual. The possession of such power is sovereignty, and the person or body in whom it resides is sovereign. Okay, so that's talking about person kings or body, like such as the king and the pope together, or the parliament, or what have you, various different types of political systems. So this would be the Congress, but only the Congress is sovereign over the military and its departments and agencies, whereas the state is sovereign over the businesses of the state, and then the people are sovereign over this actual state. That's explained. Federal jurisdiction is explained in the exclusive legislative jurisdiction, where it says the authority of the state in which the state has not reserved to itself. So it's talking about to the whatever it gave to the federal government can exercise, concurrently with the United States, unless it gave it all to the federal government, which it did on the federal lands. And the only right they have off the federal lands, like the federal government has off the federal lands, is the right to civil or criminal process, because they have no sovereignty off their own federal lands. Okay, this is Austin's theory of sovereignty. So this paper I got from GSA manuals, I believe, where they write contracts for the federal government. And as part of the contracts, they have to know what type of sovereignty they have, or what type of power or lawmaking power they have over the contractors who are doing work, or over the military once they leave the posts. So, and this is Austin's theory of sovereignty. He's talking about some stuff here, and this is section 2, Political Science Quarterly, volume 9, page 34. Austin begins by distinguishing between positive law and moral, as he does not admit that anything but a command can properly be called a law. Okay, so in the Constitution, where it says that the federal government has the power to make law, it has the power to make law only over those jurisdictions to which it was given. Okay, and that's over the seat and the lands purchased. And I've talked about this many times in different videos, which is in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, where it talks about the exclusive legislative jurisdiction to be sovereign over the people and those areas. Okay, and you can read more about that in a federal report called Jurisdiction Over Federal Areas Within the State, printed in 1956 and 1957. Okay, so here we have Austin's jurisprudence of positive law. So this was Austin's theory of sovereignty, and this is Austin's jurisprudence of positive law. And here it says positive law may be described as consisting of commands set as rules of conduct by a sovereign to a member or members of the independent political society. I'm going to enlarge this because I know it's probably hard to see. Okay, so positive laws are those things that the government has been given jurisdiction, authority, and power to make. Okay, those are the things in the Constitution. May be described consisting of commands. Now, I want to take you back over here for a second, because you see these asterisks here on these titles, like not one here, but here, 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 not one, not one, not one. Okay, so these asterisks mean that they're made positive. Down here, here's your key. This title has been enacted as positive law. Okay, positive law means the title has been made into law and can be used as evidence of having been made a law in all the courts of the United States. Okay, it says that right there, 204A, Title 1, U.S. Code 204A. A positive law citation, meaning it's been made positive, it's a positive law, is evidence of the law having been, evidence of the title having been made a law, and then can be used as evidence as being a law in the courts of the United States. So the federal courts. Okay, so the Supreme Court is supposed to decide on whether issues are of a constitutional nature. That's what they do. Okay, so these ones without an asterisk, according to Austin, appear to be contracts. Okay, so these are offers to contract, or they are already under contract with certain people or states or corporations to do certain things for the government, but they're not made positive because they're not commands, even though they may sound like commands. They're not commands. Or they may be commands after they've been signed and the contracts are then made law, because the laws are in the contracts and the contracts are in the laws. Here we go, may. Okay, because they cannot command anything when it's outside the Constitution, because they don't have the power, they don't have the sovereignty to command outside the Constitution. So 12 USC, Title 12 USC, banks and banking is not a constitutional law. And I know they tell you, like, for example, they tell you you have to pay federal taxes. Okay, well, federal taxation is not a positive law. Okay, so it cannot command anyone. Now, there are taxes in the Constitution, and those taxes are for those on federal lands. Okay, because the Constitution allows the federal government to do stuff on federal lands, because that's where its sovereignty is. Those are the law of the lands, meaning the federal lands. Okay, so it cannot command, but it can ask, and it asks by saying may. So when it says may, they don't have the power to do it until after you sign the contract. After you sign the contract, it becomes a law. How nice of it not to show up. My computer's really slow. You can go back and look at that. I wanted to show you that real quick. Shall and may, the difference between the commands and the requests. They can only request you to contract, but further in that Title 26, it may use the word shall, because it's assuming by then you have contracted. So commands set as rules of conduct by a sovereign to a member or members of the independent political society wherein the author of the law is supreme. The author of these laws are supreme, but only over the constitutional laws. Okay, so the sovereign makes commands, and the sovereign is the superior, and the superior commands the inferior, just like the Pope would command the king. The Pope may send out a papal bull, and he may command the king to do a thing. Collect more taxes, or set up a cathedral in a certain place, or give land to the Pope to set up a cathedral in a certain place, to go to war with another country, or whatever the Pope wishes. That's his command, because the Pope is the one who ordained the king. So in our political system, the people ordained and made sovereign the state for some purposes, and the state made the federal government sovereign mainly for defense purposes. And again, that's defense with a C. Okay, so you can Google OLRC, and you come to this website, and you can do searches, search shall, search may, and see, and you have to use your brain, you have to think a little, because in the non-positive codes, there may be the word shall, But it may be that it's saying its departments or agencies must, meaning shall, or command um, someone to do a thing, meaning that the agents are commanded to do it. So if you go to the hospital to have a baby, the people who work at the hospital may be required to ask you to do something. They're required to give you the form, the birth certificate form. They are required to give it to you because they're working as a legal entity under a legal name. Okay, I made a lot of videos on all this stuff, and you can go back and search through the titles and see if any of them appeal to your interest, and you can check those out. If you leave a question in the comment, I'll do my best to answer. Okay, so you go to the hospital to have a baby, and if the hospital's under federal jurisdiction or has contracts with the state to provide services to federal officers' employees, because there is no hospital at the closest military post that they're at, then they just have a blanket, they may have a blanket command to just ask everyone. You're given this parent worksheet, like for Texas, state of Texas. And so they are commanded to give it to you. You're not commanded to fill it out. You're not commanded to fill it out. Child's birthplace, private. Child's information, private. Parent one, current legal name. You could put private. I could put no contract. I could put none given. Child's legal name. You see that? That's how they did it. I didn't do that. I did not change this form other than to highlight. Okay, this is VS 109, last revised in 2016. You can these are a little bit difficult to find if you don't know the form number and the name of the form, but now that you do, you can find it probably pretty easy. Okay. If I could redo my children's birth certificates all over again, I would just put a line from here to here and put none or not applicable or private or no contract and give it back to them. That way they have proof that they gave it to me and I have proof that I gave it back. So I satisfy their requirements. They were forced by law, commanded to give me the form to fill out. Okay, and maybe they're required to get it back from me. If once they give it to me, they have a certain number of days where they're required to retrieve the form from me, or they're just required to put in the information. If I don't fill it out, what are they going to put in? Now, they may come back out of their own stupidity and say, well, you have to, but I don't, because I can go back to the codes and look and see and know that I am not commanded by my federal government or my state government. I command them. They don't command me, because I'm the sovereign and I created them, and that which you create, you control. I cannot be a master and a tenant. Okay? And the law serves the waking, not the sleeping. So there you have it. The sovereign is the issuer of the commands, but in order to command, he has to have the authority, which is called jurisdiction. The Constitution is a jurisdiction. It's a jurisdiction over the states to give the federal government the right to command for certain purposes, certain people on certain lands. And now if you go back and you look at all the stuff that I've given you, or you go back and read the Constitution, now you have a whole new perception of what it means. And I think that you will see that it makes a lot more sense to you. Okay, so here's another part of this. I'll go over real quick since I just happen to have this up, is that this is the Department of Treasury, Internal Revenue Service. It's from the reginfo.gov website. So anytime something is changed, like a form, or anytime there's some sort of action that needs to be taken, and you need to come back and see, uh, they need to be able to put this out into the public. Okay, so by public, it really means them, but they let us see it too because it kind of keeps the facade going. So I want you to just look right here where it says federalism no. And that's because Treasury and IRS are the way they're doing it is not in the Constitution, and they don't have the right to command. Okay, so when they say to file a notice redetermining a foreign tax civil penalties for failure to file, okay, now you have to really look at the code, because before you filed, did you fill out any paperwork saying you were going to file? If you did, then you have to file. If you didn't, then they have no record of you, and so you wouldn't file. That's my understanding of it. Now, federalism no means they didn't have the right to command, but then when you agreed and signed the papers, because their forms are actually advertisements, okay, this is an advertisement, this is an offer to contract with you, and you filled it out, and now you're required. And we know you didn't have to contract because it does not comply with the ideas of federalism. It does not, it says right here, 26 U.S. Code, which is Title 26, not a positive law, 7805, 905, 6689, that's the references they use for this. And it does not comply with the ideas of federalism, meaning it's not in the Constitution. There's executive order. You can look up 13132. I can show you where to get it on here, but it won't let me pull it up. My computer, for some reason, won't let me pull up this executive order. So you can go here. A friend of mine, she can pull it up. She has no problem pulling it up. She sent it to me right from here, or at least I think she did. And well, I know she sent it to me. I assume she got it from here because I asked her to get it from here, and she was able to pull it up, and she had no problems with it, and she sent it to me. And I do have a copy of it somewhere. But yeah, so that's what it's saying. It's saying that it does not comply with the ideas of federalism. Again, if you want to look up that executive order, and I've read it and shown it on some of my other videos, it says what the ideas of federalism are, and that they need to comply with the ideas of federalism. And so when they do these different things and they don't comply with the ideas of federalism, it says it right here. It's none. Government levels affected, none. But yet we're all paying taxes. We all claim to be citizens of the United States, which most of us are not. We claim to be United States citizens, which most of us are not, because we're not on federal lands. We're not under the Constitution. We're not federal taxpayers, because we really aren't supposed to be receiving any benefits from the federal government. Those are reserved to the military or other employees living on federal lands, because back in the old days they lived on federal lands. And so those people are the ones that would receive the commands from the government. Okay, we as individual sovereigns, we do not. And if you want to know more about individual sovereignty and democracy, you can check out the video by Ron Paul that came out on Friday. I think Friday was the 19th. So you can check that out and see what he's saying about it. I made a video earlier today that talks about it. Okay, so here's a good article someone sent me. Proof the United States is a criminal corporation. I don't see a date for this here, written by Paul L. Chang. And he's talking about, or she, I don't, person, Chang person is talking about basically a lot of the stuff that I say in my videos. However, he's claimed that some of this stuff was secret, and it's not a secret. It's just that we don't know it, and it's hard to find. You have to really read about jurisdiction and the history of jurisdiction in this country, and the federal jurisdiction report put out by the government. If you read that, it'll explain a lot to you, and there'll be no question about it. So that's my video on the commands from the sovereign, but you have to know who the sovereign is and whether or not they have sovereignty over you. If they don't, they cannot command you, and that's the way it works. Please like, share, and subscribe, and help out all your friends. You never know when someone may find this video useful, so sharing is a great tool. And have a good night.